Hi everyone. I'd like to introduce to this semester's lecture series, first of all, and then I introduce our speaker. And I'm going to read. The theme for this year's lecture series is titled Healing Environments, Architectures and Landscapes After the Crisis. The still unresolved COVID health emergency, the crisis of democracy and inequality around the world, and of course, the increasingly visible effects of climate change are just a few examples of the enormous challenges facing architecture and architects. Will we be able to leverage spatial design so its effects improve things instead of increasing the damage? Can we imagine new architectures and landscapes that contribute to the healing of our social and environmental ailments? This series, and specifically today's lecture by Gustavo Utrabo, is an attempt to open conversations about how architectural and landscape design can be part of the solution. I would also like to recognize Matt Nicolette, who's looking at from landscape architecture at us from online, he told me, and Lindsay Deaton, who's right here, and Berin Terim, who's right there, who have co-curated this lecture series with me. They have selected an amazing roster of speakers, and they will be able to be here introducing one speaker, the three of them, during the rest of the semester. Please be on the lookout because this is an incredible lecture series that we have prepared this year for you guys. So today, and I will start now introducing our lecture. I'm really excited about it. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the 2022 Richard O'Kane Lecture. First of all, I would also like to thank the Richard O'Kane's family and very specifically his widow, whose generous support makes it possible for us to bring architects and scholars from around the world. Like a speaker for today's lecture, who is the Brazilian architect Gustavo Utrabo, who despite being a rather young architect, he graduated in architecture and urbanism from the Federal University of Paraná in Brazil in 2010. So that doesn't seem like that long ago. However, he has already achieved incredible, outstanding international recognition. He received the 2018 RIBA International Prize, which is the highest award given by the Royal Institute of British Architects. This is a huge deal in Europe, the kind of huge deal that people like Foster, Richard Rogers, Renzo Piano gets, right? And you have this really young Brazilian architect getting it, which is pretty amazing. He has participated in conferences and in various events and institutions such as the Harvard GST, the IIT in Chicago, where he is a visiting professor this year, the University of Hong Kong, the Future Architecture Platform of Museum MAO in Ljubljana, in Slovenia, and the School of Architecture and Urbanism in Sao Paulo, among others. He has been a visiting professor at Hong Kong too, and assistant professor at the Escola da Cidade de Sao Paulo. Gustavo built work has the unique feature of maintaining the seriousness and innovative drive of the Brazilian modern masters from the Sao Paulo School of Architecture. Architects like Villanova Artigas or Paulo Mendes da Rocha, that if you guys don't know, should just go ahead and look at them because they are some of the most interesting, powerful, and I think current modern architects of the 20th century, but adapting this modernity to a completely new cultural and technical paradigm. In that way, he has been able to renew the social ambition intrinsic to early modern architecture, but making it sensitive to the environment, to Brazil's delicate landscapes and cultures. Please help me welcome our Richard O'Kane lecture speaker, Gustavo Utrabo. Thanks a lot. Thank you, David.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation, David, James, and all the faculty. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be here. And it's lovely that I saw this presentation because it feels that I'm part of it already, right? So that's great. What I want to share with you today is 6 projects. And I'm trying to establish a relationship with the theme of this series, right? And I put this theme for my lecture. How can we make silent voice sing? Can you hear? Can I open here? It's better now? All right, sorry. Should I start all over or can? All right, thank you. Never know, right? All right, so the title of our conversation today is how can we make silent voices sing? And not that I'm doing it properly, but I'm trying to reimagine diversity, banality, or hiding aspects of our culture through architecture. And by doing that, I'm I'm believing that we can actually transform people's life and transform the way that we build today. So my practice in Brazil is in a city called São Paulo. That's a huge city. It's 20 million people. It's chaotic. And our country, Brazil, is a continental country. And as David said previously, had this wonderful modern legacy that in one hand is beautiful and the other one is overwhelming sometimes. So I'm trying to navigate between this modernity, this legacy from modernity, and how can we rethink the culture of our country today. So for that, I started working in various different parts of the country. The first project that I will share with you, it's an Amazon rainforest community industry. And as I said previously, Brazil has this continental, it is this continental country. And to arrive to this place, it took me 48 hours from São Paulo to arrive there. And the journey is quite intense. To fight and then you get a hold. Then you arrive Oops, sorry. Oh, it's fine, I can just. So you travel, and then you arrive into this community in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. And what they do there, they collect what you guys probably know here is the Brazilian nut, that you can produce oil, or you can eat the nut, or you produce oil. These are the nuts that are drying there. This community is a community of 40 families that go to the forest, extract the nuts, and produce the oil and sell the oil for the cosmetic industry. And what is relevant for the effort is that to a forest to produce a good amount of nuts, the forest should be healthy. So they keep the forest as much healthy as they can. And I don't know how much you know about it, but in Brazil nowadays, like the deforestation is getting super higher, and probably you know that Amazon is the big producer of oxygen for the whole world, right? So their daily work is very important, not just for the community, but in a more broader sense. And when I arrived there, I used to spend a long time with the community or with the clients, in this case, right? And when I arrived there, I met all these lovely people, and they have so many different skills that for me is just amazing, you know. So when I started my career, just finished my studies and opened my office, right? And I knew right away that I didn't know by that time anything about anything in the end. So I need to learn a lot. And for me, the best way to learn is to engage with people and try to understand where the knowledge came from and how can I use their knowledge and how can I be useful for them as a tool. So what is interesting about them that they go and stay into the forest for months. So they collect the nut, they build their own hunts, into the forest and collect the nut and get back and to produce the oil. So I spent 10 days with them, and I understood that they spend 4 months collecting the nut, 4 months producing the oil, and 4 months of the year they don't have any income. So if they want to get another job, what happened that legally, if you are collecting a harvest in Brazil, you cannot have any other job. So what happened that they go to the informal market or do whatever they need to do. So I thought that would be a great opportunity for me and for them to transform the building process into a process that we can exchange knowledge and they can learn how to build and build better for them and sell the service to the others. So the project is this that now is quite, for this image is really not precise in terms of what is the project, but this is how it is my process. So I go to the community, I take a lot of photos, and I get back to the office and do a lot of drawings and oil on painting and things that take time to do it, because it is a great opportunity for me to learn. And I do a lot of models and try to research structure mainly in some projects. This one should be really economical. So I researched the vernacular architecture and more kind of precise structure as Cedric Price and so on and so forth. So we designed the project and we went to the community to show how it was and see if the community agreed with it. And in the end, they did, and it was just a wonderful process. And this lady that is with the hands like that, she's a really important lady in the community, and she was looking to the model and asking like exactly what would happen inside the spaces. So this project, more than anything for me, is how can I give them the voice to be part of it? How can I exchange knowledge? And how can I treat this situation in a really respectful way? So the project, it's combined of two main elements, brick and wood. And what we thought that could be interesting is to think this project in phases. So the first thing to do is to design and build a canopy, right? Because if you do build a canopy, you can work below it. And the difference, what happened in Amazon, that you have two main seasons. One is the rainy one, another one is just, it's more dry. But the temperature don't vary too much. So how you treat the water is a big thing in terms of how can I build that. So we designed this canopy, and first of all, we build, we're in the process of building now this project. So we build the canopy and start to design the volumes of the industry below it. And to design the canopy, when I was there, I got so fascinated with these super simple wood boats that they produce, but the boats could carry a lot of weight, right? So I started to talk with the group of people that designed the boats, and from there, we came with the structural solution. How can we joint the pieces of wood in a really straightforward way to design the canopy, right? And in this project, as in other ones, I do have a wonderful engineer that works with me. That's Eli Olga. He's known for his ability. He knows a lot of wood, so I work a lot with him. And in the bottom so we have the canopy, and we have these brick walls that we're gonna do using the brick from the soil, using the soil from the local. And what is interesting about it, is that you see the project have these different volumes, and when we're starting to think about the project, these volumes are assembled in different ways. So it means that each volume, you learn how to assemble bricks in different manner. And for me, again, this is not, it's formal, but it's an opportunity for me and for them to learn how to build better. Right? And now we are under the construction moment. And I just put these two images together because I do a visual inventory of places that I pass. And in the end, when I get back to the images, they're not the same, but they mean so much to me because the way that the tree it's coming from the ground is quite close. How we're gonna design the columns, that it's concrete in the first phase, then it's this wood kind of canopy that's more light and will float above the ground, right? Because in the end, we are just moving the ground and assemble it in a different way. That's the walls and bricks, right? So this second project that I want to share with you today is what we call Children Village in Canoanã, that is in the central part of Brazil, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. and it was a boarding school. And in Brazil, boarding school, it means that you don't have money at all. To a certain point that you cannot take care of your kids. Or in this type of situation that it's impossible to bring your kid to school. This is a rural area, and sometimes to go from the school to their houses, the kids takes roughly 4 hours, right? So imagine that for the father that works into the rural area, that works like it's a heavy labor, work all day, every day, it's impossible. So what happened that the kid don't study, and the foundation, that's a bank foundation, they did this school over there. That's amazing that because they receive 100 kids every year. So the kids start studying with 7 years and graduated with 18. And it's the only opportunity for these kids to have a different life, right? So this is super meaningful. And again, when I got the commission, I went to the site and spent 10 days with them because I never designed a house for a kid, right? So how to approach that? First of all, of course, meet the kids, and it's just amazing. And again, it's a long flight, and it's 12 hours from São Paulo. Then when I arrive into this place in the middle of nowhere, you have this amazing energy of hundreds of kids just running into the streets and looks like a paradise and a sparkling of hope that we can be more free in some way. And what I did too is I visit a lot of their parents' house just to understand how they build and what are the spaces that are meaningful for them. And in Brazil, again, it's mainly a tropical country, and it's super hot. And this place, they say that they have 2 seasons in the year. One is summer, and another one is hell. So it's super, super hot, right? So the spaces like this one on the left, that is what we call veranda. It is the space in between inside and outside. This is a buffer zone that you cast a shadow into the wall. But it's a space that you don't have a proper function for it. So what is interesting, that she's taking care of the kid, the chickens are around, and she's hanging the clothes. So it functions a lot, right? And another part that of the local culture is the indigenous culture, that they build with beautiful structure in wood and straw. But what is interesting about this image for me is this satellite object in the middle of it. This is in the middle of an island, this photo, and the only information that they receive is from the television. And what television says that is progress, what television says that it's like that you're doing well in your life, is an image that is totally different from this one. It's a concrete house, it's a white concrete house with air conditioning. So everything that they want is moving far from this, right? But what happened when they do is that they build in concrete blocks and they put air conditioning, but they don't have the money or the resources to pay the bills for the air conditioning every month because you use every year. So going back to vernacular in this case was sustainable solution in terms of how can we think natural ventilation, so on and so forth. And what we did a series of activities with the kids, just trying to create bond with them, but to increase the sense of belonging from them. And again, I'm doing a lot of paintings and drawings, and was just wonderful that we had the chance to build it. And in the end, it's two buildings like that, one for the boys and another one for the girls. Each of them measure, sorry, I just know measures in meters, so it's 165 meters in this direction. I don't know how much it is, David. 400 feet. All right. So it's quite massive. It's 500 feet. All right. And 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 the building is quite simple in terms of strategy, and I think uh, I, it's close to totally different, but in terms of strategy, it's close to what you have here from Thomas Pfeiffer, that is design this canopy and have these volumes playing below this canopy in a clever and precise way. So what we have is this structure. Our structure is like in a grid of 5.9 by 5.9 meters. And why that? Because all the timber structure was prefabricated and bring to the site and assemble. And the trucks in Brazil have 12 meters. So the structure is half of the size of the truck. It means that we can put a lot of wood in the truck and ship to the site. And this project is from a foundation. It's a bank foundation that's doing kind of a pro bono projects. So money is not. it's really tight. So everything that we can reduce, in terms of budget, we reduce it. So it's a really straightforward building, right? And the volumes and everything is in the same module, right? And what we actually increased was the size of the verandas. And after you see in the plan that proportionally speaking, don't make too much sense, right? And what is the inside area and what is this outside area? But what was incredible that this outside area caused a problem for them, because they don't know. Previous from that, they don't have this type of space. Now they have. So how they occupy that, it was another question. So the school with the kids start to thinking what actually they can do. Of course, they can play, and they know how to play. So we are just drawing a shadow for them to play inside of it. But after 1 month, when I got back with the jurors of RIBA, our ABA prize, just was showing around and them, and I just go to a certain area of the building, and the girls were doing yoga classes, right? And this is like, for us, it's like just yoga, right? For them, it's like incredible, because someone saw class into YouTube and starting to do with the kids, and this possibility to do that is just because it started with a problem that we have good amount of space to deal with it. And inside we have these patios, so all the rooms are looking for the patios, so where the kids can hang around and enjoy the beauty of our outside spaces in our nature. And another thing that we did too here is we use only local vegetation, so plants, everything was local. And what they intend that it was kind of just random bushes, and that they don't need to, just something that they can cut off. Here we design in a nice way so they can actually see it from a different perspective. So this building have a lot of layers, and how can we exchange knowledge and show to them a different way of being in the world. And the rooms previous of this dormitory, they have another one that the rooms were a bigger rooms for 40 kids, and it was crazy in terms of bullying and so on and so forth. And now they share the rooms with 6 friends. So in terms of the plan, it's a really simple plan, and in terms of the dormitories too, and what we did, that is a little bit close. What happened here is I wanted to design a structure that could be as light as possible. And in order to do that, I use a lot of the mass of the bricks to cantilever the whole structure, right? If you see the column, how the column touches the ground is just 1 point. And to do that, I need to create a lot of stiffness into the building in different layers, right? So when it touches the ground gently, right? So for me, this is a very important thing. We should respect the ground as much as we can. And when we're gonna touch the ground, it should be respectful. And in Brazilian architecture, this is quite intense. But if you go to analyze the indigenous culture, the way that they treat the land, the way that they treat nature, the way they treat water, it's super respectful. So for me, it's an attempt to create this dialogue. And again, how we assemble that, so this kind of steel element that lifts the whole structure from the ground. And you see this wall is brown, is one important wall of the building that you cannot demolish it because it helps to cantilever the whole building. So the stairs that lead you upstairs. So all the bedrooms are downstairs. With that, we create a double layer of insulation for the heat. And the first request that the director of the school did to the foundation in São Paulo it was blankets, because the temperature drops so much during the night inside the dorms that the kids need to use blanket. And I'm saying, like, the temperature here is like 23 inside the dorms, right? But they are not used to it. And when you go up, so we have these balconies, and every time that the balcony goes out, it reaches the column and again, stabilize the structure. So the columns are mainly 15 by 15 centimeters. So I don't know how much it is. Sorry. And when you go up there, you have TV room, study room. And in terms of section, it's just one direction for the canopy. And this is the TV room and the study. And in terms of the bricks, so again, here it was our first attempt to do that. We produce all the bricks locally. So we dig and to get the soil. And after we dig it, we fill this dig with water and put fish over there so they can learn how to create fish, right? And use the soil to design the bricks. And we count all the bricks. All the bricks have different names. And with that, we managed to design a small factory to produce the bricks. And we need to produce 4,000 bricks per day in order to deliver the project in the day that we needed and the budget that we needed. When you build outside, if you build fast, it's much more cheaper than build a long process, right? So this is how when you see from outside, and this is how when you see both of them in the middle of the landscape. So it's you can understand how far from everything they are, and the school here is a small city per se, so you have everything that is needed for them. And in the end, the most rewarding part of it is not. It is how can we improve the performance of the kids. So after it was finished, they got 30% more kids into the university. And this is a really big deal for us. University in Brazil is public, right? So if you can afford, you can go to private, but the good ones are public, so it's more difficult to enter, right? So if these kids can enter into a public university to do whatever they do, it's just amazing because they can learn, make money, then usually they come back, right, and help the fathers. So it was great, and the client got really, really excited with the project and with the proportion that the project in the end achieve in terms of the quality of architecture. And the client, the owner of the bank, came to me and said, like, it looks like a fancy hotel in a beautiful beach, you know. And we did with like, it cost $700 per square meter. It's quite low, right? So it was great. So they invited us to do another one. That this one is a more kind of retrofit of the existing building. And when this is more south of Brazil, and it's a land that it's called Pantanal, and it's known for how flat it is, and it's like hugely flat, and have a typology of the soil that have a lot of clay. And during the rainy season, it gets almost like a slab, so the water cannot enter into it, and you see kind of huge lanes of water that form from one day to another one. So when I was there and tried to understand this territory, I was always trying to understand the measure of things, you know, and it's really difficult, at least for me, to measure nature, right? And I think this piece from Carl Andre is just beautiful, because without this line of blocks of wood, you cannot have the dimension of the topography and the distance between it. So I started the project, this one, trying to understand what was the system of measurements of the existing building that we can adapt or we can use as a initial rule, right? And what was really interesting was the rhythm of the windows. That is something that we kept from the beginning and to the new building. That's the same rhythm. We change the roof, we change a lot of things. And here again is one building for the boys and another one for the kids, for the girls. And mainly what we did is, so in the body you see the existing units, then how we reformulated the units, and the catwalks that connect everything. So why the catwalks? Because the catwalks helps the kids to not step into the water during the rainy season, and they are protected. And with that we create just one building rather than 12 buildings, right? And this is a really, really long building. It's 4 blocks and a half. So it's 450 meters. So it's 1,200. And with this, by creating these catwalks, we create these courtyards where the kids play, and we design a lot of things for them to that. In terms of plan, again, it's really, it's quite simple and really straightforward. And for this project, we again, starting from that measure, we thought a whole system of prefabricated pieces. Here we cannot use wood because it was too far away, and the most reliable material that we can use was concrete for the foundations and for the slabs. That was everything prefabricated, and the structure in steel. I'm trying to be as much as straightforward as possible with all the details. And this is how it gets in the end. And we did a lot of workshops with the students and the local community to do the drawings, the murals into the building that are connected to the indigenous culture. And in Brazil, we do have a legacy from Portugal. So we used to be colonies from Portugal. So this mural is quite important in our history. So here we are trying to shift the content of it and bring this narrative. So from inside, the patios, how the canopy don't touch the, the, the roof of the catwalk. And on the top of this catwalk, it's gonna be garden. So you walk through this nature. Here are the TV room and study area. And what is interesting about this building too is that we play with the roof in a specific way that is going down in diagonal. So it's quite simple, but what happened with the existing shape, when you're looking from outside, it looks like a whole, just one roof. Then when you're getting close to it, you understand that it's different units. It's just because you can see this building from so far away. So the next project, it's a project in São Paulo. It was a result of a competition that we won to design this campus for this advertising agency that's called WPP. So they did, it's a huge international agency. And they did this competition and just go back. And São Paulo is a super interesting city, but what we did is we just put all the nature down and build on top of it as much as we can. Right? And this photo for me is super interesting because it is in the Pinheiros River. So this is how the river was, and this is how it ends nowadays. So it's just a straight line, right? And you lose a lot of things in terms of the speed of the water, things like that. But this image for me is the sobreposition of nature and culture in a not such a good way, right? So I started presenting my project to the competition with this image and saying that we need to reestablish a more direct or respectful and intelligent discourse between our city and nature, and how to do that. Right? So the site is interesting because it's into the encounter of two of the main rivers of the city, that is Tietê River and Pinheiros River. And this is a flood area, so when it rains a lot, it gets really, really messy. And you see, like the video, the drones arriving to the site. It's a huge site. It's a building for 4,000 people. One slab is 11,000 square meters, so it's quite huge. And I was like thinking about this relationship between nature and the city, how we can design something that don't needs to look new all the time, right? And I'm often look to these banal elements of our daily life just to try to understand and reposition it in a certain way. So this is the site. And again, in terms of a lot of my process, I'm doing these collages, these drawings that are really vague. And I was talking with ACR office in Spain, and we are sharing how much of these vague images of the beginning of the project are so meaningful to make your concept really clear. And because the final result is a result of the process, what is important is to drive to the correct direction. So I'm doing, again, a lot of quick studies in models. And what was interesting about this project, it was, again, a competition. And I call the brief, some part of it wasn't clear. And I call the guy that was organizing the competition. I asked him about the parking lots. How should I, the size of it, because it was very, very strange. And he told me, look, just do a beautiful building in front and just do random precast concrete building on the back. And that's everything that I needed to do everything in precast concrete as a parking lot in the end, right? And this series of photos, this photo is from a really close friend of mine that's called Felipe Russo. When I was doing the competition, he was doing this series of photos that's called automatic parking, because we do have a lot in São Paulo. And it's a building that you never enter inside of it because it's just machines, it's just for cars. So we started entering into it, and I was like really intriguing about it. And this was the model that we show into the competition. And it was, again, this relationship that is, you see, inside is really rigid, really pragmatical, and outside is much more kind of organic, and it's creating this relationship between inside and outside in a more blurry way that I think it's quite interesting. So the building have three patios. One is the biggest one, and in terms of the ground floor, we try to do maybe looking for the heritage of bullet marks, but we are trying to design this ground as kind of natural as possible, and to do that, we are again like relying in kind of not so often materials. For example, green concrete, right? To do the whole ground of the building, and the relationship between the concrete, this concrete floor and the outside areas is by the stones inside the concrete. So the stone inside the concrete is something often that you not see, and it's inside there. And these projects try to bring it out into the landscape and to the building too. So a lot of drawings that I start like doing, thinking how can we put things together in a, again, straightforward way, economical way, but with design, and do a building like this. Doing a building precast concrete, it's really difficult to add design to it because it's almost standard things. But as this building was too big, it was possible to design and think, for example, the column in a cross shape, and the beams and the slabs. And when you go to the factory that is producing the building, is this huge factory that's almost like a monster that is producing a lot of pieces per day. And now we have 30% of the building already produced. And I was always thinking about like the relationship between materials, the weight of the materials, the texture of it. And when I arrived, the first time that I arrived at the factory, I saw this sand bed where they put the concrete test over there just to see if this lamp is correct. That is, well, it's a really technical in terms of the concrete, but it's just to understand if the concrete is in the correct proportion. And I was thinking that could be a really interesting thing to give a second thought. And because in this building, you see it's everything prefabricated, and we need mass. To dissolve the columns, we need mass in other sides, in other parts of the building to make the building stiff as possible. So I start to think panels or murals in concrete that could do that, and thinking about kind of natural type of texture that with time a bird can do a nest or something can grow over there. And I brought them the idea. I did a lot of prototypes in my office. It's quite a messy office with a lot of objects and prototypes all around because I'm really driven to material. And I did a prototypes in the office, and I just showed them the prototypes. And this is Michael, who was just a random guy into the factory. And he became the artist that is drawing all these walls, and it's 112 walls of 16 meters by 4, so it's big. And the tools that he used is that ones. So I think it's just, for me, it's just incredible. So here, when we start into doing the prototypes that increase the size of it, and now it's how it is. So again, problems of colors and things that we are figure out. But in the end, we designed this a way to design these undulations in the sandbed, and the way he throw the stone into the sandbed, and this has become something that is done from someone that wasn't called an artist, and now he have a different status with their colleagues. In terms of the skin of the building, again, pursuing lightness. So we designed this skin that covered the whole building and protect from the sun, reducing air conditioning, and so on and so forth. And by making this curvature in the skin, we reduce the thickness of it. So it's a skin of 1 millimeter that's going all around, and it's just fixed on the bottom and in the top. And it's just amazing that it's working out. So this is how the building should look like in 3 years from now. The construction site, the construction just break ground now. And the next project is connected to this one, but it's a totally different one. It's an art installation that I used to do in the beginning of my career, because I don't have clients in the beginning, and I was doing a lot of competitions. But the only way to have money to build something is through art. So I was applying to art fellowships and things like that to build installations. So this project is an installation in São Paulo, and it is in a public space. And when they called me to think about the installation, it was a time that I just got back from Chicago, where I was living for almost 1 year. And when I arrived back in São Paulo, I was shocked with the amount of people living into the streets. So now in São Paulo, we have 60,000 people living into the streets. And wherever you go, you see things like that. And this is a house, right? This is a home. So for me, it was like thinking do installation to think about the shelter, and actually in the end construct a shelter in a public area and see how it goes. And in terms of the images that were in my back, in the back of my mind, was this kind of ingenious, naive structure, but it's quite clever too, this wood structure. And when I was going to see this concrete factory, in the back of the concrete factory, you see this mountain of concrete that is not, that's a huge waste. And it's even it's better than do in situ, but again, it's something that's not good. And I was feeling like the weight of it in me. So I started to think the installation that is in this place, a beautiful square in São Paulo, where I choose this spot, and the shape of the installation is this one in the end, and this is a project that I did myself, this model, and this was everything that we need to construct it. But the interesting part of it is how can we use the weight to stabilize the whole structure of it. So the structure is this tripod, and the tripod is on the ground and don't have anything below it. And at the top of the tripod, this is tied with rope, but it's still kind of, the joint is not a precise joint, so it moves around. And when we put this this beam on the top, it gets stuck in the middle, and it got a rigid knot. And the weight of the stone, that is not a stone, is like the rest of my building. that's there. It's the element that cantilever and make everything stiff, and is the element that allow the textile to be in this situation. So it's much more how this textile that is a random textile used into the construction and this very simple structure is related to nature. And how interesting is that this weight, this mass that's floating and moving, and in some way for me it's like reminds me of my weight here. And the last project that I want to share is a project that we did into the Xingu indigenous park. It is in the center of Brazil. Indigenous people in Brazil have been murdered since the Portuguese arrived. So it was millions and millions of people that were murdered and still are murdered during the current presidency. So this was a series of photographs from a wonderful artist that's Claudia Andujar. Claudia came from Germany during the Second World War. She was a refugee, so she went to Brazil, and she photographed the indigenous Yanomami community during the 80s in the same way that the Nazis used to do. So this is how strong it is. And again, I just went to the place and started to stay with them for a week. And it's super difficult to arrive, and it's 24 hours from São Paulo to arrive. And when you arrive, it's just beautiful. It's this, the language is so different, and the way that they build their ocas is just amazing. And my task here was to design and build, a common center that is not in the center of the community, but it's a common center that we can establish a dialogue with them. So how not indigenous people can talk in a place that is not inside of their village. And when I arrived there, I was like, with this idea that's quite naive, that thinking that why they have like a plastic chair, why they are eating like biscuits like that. So I was thinking that they should be as they were like 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And it was totally naive on my part, but it was super interesting to understand what is the boundaries, how can we establish a different dialogue, and how can I step outside and just build something that will be meaningful for them. And what is amazing, that they build their ocas in 2 people in 4 months. And so they go to the forest, they cut everything, and he was showing me how good he could cut a tree, and he was so proud of it. And this is the house that I stood there later. And what is interesting about the oca is that, let's see if I have another photo here. What is interesting about the oca is that you just have 1 door and 1 window. So what happens that the center of the building is where the light comes in. So it's the common area. It's where you do your meals, whatever, you do everything. And the borders are more this private area. So what actually establishes the program is not any partition. It's just the absence of light. So it's how is the weight of the shadow that create these boundaries. And for me, it was like an incredible experience. So our building is put outside the community, and again, the importance of shadow in these situations, right? So again, we didn't have money to build it, and when I was there, I presented the project for the first time. I presented the project to what we call cacique, that is like the leadership of the community, and I shared the project to them, and he said like, and I was trying to persuade, I'm trying to share some thoughts with him, and he got really upset with me, and once he told me, look at me in the eyes. He was kind of 80, but really, really strong guy, and looked me in the eyes and said like, white architect sit and design what I want. And I was like, all right. So I stepped back and I asked, what do you want? And he told me like, I want a white building. Then I was like, it's impossible to do a white building here because imagine that they paint the body in a way that they can dance. It's how they express their culture. And then he was saying like, I want to do the building white, and I want to paint the building with the way that we paint our body, the building. And I was arguing with him that the building should be a support for them to keep painting the body, not the other way around. So the building should be something that should not be white. And he was really, really upset with me. And the next day, he woke up and just invited me to lunch. And it was a crocodile that he killed in that day. And we eat the crocodile. In the end of the meal, he looked at me and said, like, all right, let's not paint in white, but I want to change things. Then, all right, you do whatever you want. So what I did in the end, I just thought the structure as a support, that the structure can get bigger or get smaller, depends of the community that they want to build it. So we designed a structure that everything is connected with scrolls and could be disassembled when they want. And then I designed it, and I arrived there with the constructor, that I arrived with the plans and everything, the details and everything. And he could not read it because he never worked with an architect. So the plan doesn't make any sense. So what was great that I brought the model and we established a dialogue just with the model and showing the measures in the ground and things like that. And some steel pieces I produced myself and sent to them. And I got back 4 months later, and it was built. And it was, for good or for bad, it was beautifully built in my perspective. And the way I established a relationship with the OCAS was in terms of the symmetry of the building and how can I play with simple openings and to create this variation of shadows inside the space. So now I should have a volume here. Thank you very much. That's all.
So we have plenty of time for having a conversation with Gustavo, and I know that he'd be happy to answer us. So we'll open the floor now. I don't know how we're gonna do that. We're gonna maybe try to move this. We'll see how that works. Come on.
Hey, I was wondering if you have a life expectancy for your buildings. I know, like, the water in Brazil and the flooding with the rainy season. Like, do you know how long the buildings should last?
I don't know. Maybe forever, right? I think we design a way that it should last forever, and trying to as low maintenance as possible. So, for example, the detail of bring the wood column apart from the ground is just about it. You know, how can we keep the wood intact in terms of the water, right? So, but I think in the end, this is an interesting question, because in the end, few of these buildings, not like the big one, but they come from a system that you can actually dismantle it and reuse the pieces, right? It's not efficient and so on and so forth, but in some way you can dismantle all of this, right? You can just bricks, you can take it off the bricks. This wood structure, you can take it off and detach the wood structure, and so. But we don't have any kind of legislation and things like that. That's true.
Thank you so much for the amazing presentation and these awesome, beautiful buildings. I have a question. Actually, I'm going to kindly ask you for, particularly for our second year students, if you can elaborate a little bit more about the process from those early conceptual drawings that don't really show any figure form, but you said they were very influential and they were very important for your design approach. Can you elaborate about the time from those drawings and how they somehow translate into your design process?
So that's a great question. So usually what I do, I take a lot of photos, right? So I do believe, let's go back. Architecture it's about history too, right? It's how you are related to this history of architecture, of humanity, of knowledge, so on and so forth. And you can choose which part of the history you want to use, right? So I strongly believe that I need to have my own, that I can start from there, right? So I'm not never starting from scratch, but I'm starting from these perspectives of the world, the things that interest me. So take photos of things makes daily. It helps me to have this visual inventory, right? That's floating whatever, right? That I have in the drive too, right? Then when I started aside a project, I just try to go to the site and be there as much as I can without designing anything. And this is really difficult for me because I'm anxious and I just want to start it and just want to finish, got another one. So I'm just trying to be as relaxed and as present as possible. So try to talk with people, so on and so forth. Then with that, I have a lot of emotions that you cannot actually describe so much in the beginning because you need to elaborate that. And in a way to elaborate these emotions for me is, or these feelings, or this, what is interesting for me is by drawing, right? And I do the drawings oil on paper because the oil take a long time to dry, so I can redo it or I can do different layers into it. And it gives me time to think about it. So after that, I know exactly which direction I should do the research, right? Then after that, we starting doing models, and a lot of models, without actually I don't want to finish. And for me, this is the most fun part, right? So some of the models, for example, that competition that I showed, that was a big model. Me and another guy, we did it all by ourselves. So we actually build a bigger model, and I was just cutting the model because I was like looking from here, that's not good. So, and doing the math between the plan and what is needed. So in the end, the model, I call a model of reality, because in Brazil we have what is model that is strictly to architecture, and model of reality is something that could be anything in the end, and could be, yeah, and it could be an object by itself, kind of. I can call it a sculpture if I want, right? So I'm doing these objects all the time, and then little by little, the project starts to appear, to really appear, and I leave it open as much as I can during the whole process, right? So what happened that all the buildings that I show here, I was really committed to the construction, and with that I can change things during the construction, because not the main structure, not like the main details, but a lot of things that I'm not quite sure. I say I don't know how to handle this right now. I need to see more, and I explain to the client. The client never likes it, but it's how it goes. So for me, it's not that I have the project. The project's never done in some way, and not that one project starts into another one, but the project is not done. And when the people enter, so new things start to happen, then it's the interesting part to see if like it was well done or not. And so my process is kind of a long one. My office is a small office. I have 12 people, and I take care of everything with them. And I have we design together in a way that they try to say that I'm wrong all the time. And that's good, because if you are too confident, probably you're doing something that is not good enough anymore, because you know how to do it. So we need to explore that.
Okay. So in your presentation for the first children's village that you presented, you started to discuss how we start to define progress. I think, and relating to the study of vernacular, right? And I think for the longest time, especially during industrialization and modernism, the idea of progress meant globalization and cleanliness and clean lines or whatever else. But we're starting to understand that what used to be thought of as primitive, right, is really they've got it right? Like just local building practices and like understanding the site and what is offered to you, right? So really large question, but how do you define progress?
Well, I think in terms of humanity, we are moving forward in a lot of directions. If you like read *Sapiens*, for example, he talks a lot about it, and the question is not how can I define progress, but the question for me is how can I redo history, right? So when I'm saying I can choose whatever I came from or whatever I want to say, this is the correct thing to do. So what I'm doing is like just giving a step back, take a look to it, learn from it, and doing a different thing. If this is the product, I don't know, and I don't think maybe it's not, but I think it's allow me to introduce a new discourse in architecture, allow me to rethink materials that wasn't used during the previous generations. So for example, a building, as I show in timber structure like that, was the biggest timber structure that we built recently. And one of our masters used to say that why you use wood. You know, just wood is something that you just cut over there. This is for someone that don't know how to build, right? So I think this kind of reinterpretation and of the material and put the material in a different kind of context allows us to expand our knowledge, to rethink our history, and maybe go to a more precise location. Someone else?
You might have mentioned it towards the beginning of your lecture, but your mic wasn't quite working. So I was curious as to, you're fine. I was curious as to how you came into the knowledge of their need. Obviously, they're pretty remote, and I'm not sure how advanced their technologies were in order to get in touch with you or to express that need. So how did you come to discover that need and then get in touch with them? Like, how did in a yes, like, yes.
So what happened that the community had the resources to do, so they sell the oil, right? And a 0.001% of the final product in terms of the profit goes back to the community, apart from what they sell the oil. And they have been doing this for 20 years. So now they have quite a good amount of money, and they decided that they need to build a new industry. So they came to this cosmetic industry that's called Natura. Today it's like big, owns Avon, owns Aesop, a lot of in the world. And they come to the Natura and ask like, we want to design a new industry. What should we do? So Natura called me and said like, maybe you are a good fit to this situation. You want to go there and visit and know the community, and then we start like that. So I spent like 1 week over there with them. I travel abroad with them. I got malaria. I went to the hospital later. It's kind of crazy story, almost life and death story, but it was a great experience for me.
So when you build these really cool structures for these more rural communities, I was wondering what your thoughts were on you could perceive it as almost like distancing them from their original culture. I was just wondering what you think about that.
So what is important is the typology of buildings that I'm doing, right? This is not the common building. I'm doing kind of something that's have a different function, right? So I think the way that they build, the way that they are, will keep the same. What I'm showing is that they have different possibilities, and they will choose, right? So it's not about what is right or wrong for me and in the relationship with them. It's just about how can I bring more knowledge and so they can learn from that and they can choose whatever they want, you know, in the end. Because, yeah, it's their freedom to do that. Can you come down? Please, thank you.
Thank you. So my question is, in the dialogue, the open dialogue that you've had, you had in your project, how do you manage the information? So like, I'm just imagining there's so many players, so there are people funding the projects. Then there's the clients, and then there's those who go and choose the projects, and most cases, they don't have the funds. How do you then manage that, all this information coming in, what's important, what's not important, and the emotions that you're feeling on the side? So just for one of the projects that you worked on, especially the first one, how did you manage and then provide a product that's beneficial for all the parties involved?
So we usually do a lot of collaborative process that is much more how can I get information precisely and but in the end it's what we think is right, because in the end I'm signing a paper that I'm responsible for that, right? So I try to be as open as possible in terms of architecture too. If you see, like, the structure are quite open and allow kind of modification without harming the whole concept, So a lot of things in the building are not exactly the way that I want, but it's part of it. And now I'm more kind of mature in some way to understand that I need to leave gaps for them to fulfill that gaps. And it varies in each project, because you need to understand what are the relevance of each people in certain time of the project. The client is paying, but sometimes it's not the builder, and they have a kind of strange conversation, so you need to be in the middle of it and try to create a peaceful place to work. So we in the office, we try to work in a really horizontal way with everyone in the process. We are not saying we will not do this kind of thing, but after we have a concept, we keep everything attached to that concept from the beginning to the end. So it's really clear to the client, whatever is involved, that if they want something that is not into the main concept, it will not fit into the project. And what is interesting with that the project is moving forward, the people get involved with the concept, and they starting to say to the others, no, let's not even talk with Gustavo, because Gustavo will say that it's not in the concept, so it's not possible to do that. And what is possible is here. So I try to navigate in this way. But again, every project, it's a different relationship, a different set of people. There's a different set of person that is working with me, even in the office, or who is doing kind of the electrical part of the building, and so on and so forth. So, and because all our building are really straightforward, so you see everything, right? We don't have the money or the resources to put a cladding on the top of something, right? So everything is really straightforward. So it means that I need to design everything. I'm not designing the thickness of the cables, but I know exactly where the cables are passing through it, because otherwise it could crash with something into the construction site, and this will be a problem. So.
So I was just gonna ask, like, when you're given these projects to work on, how would you describe the creative freedom? Like, are you given like a rigid, rigid instructions on how to do the project? Because you were talking about like how you create everything, or you like draw everything. So like, is there a specific way you have to do it, or is it more like you have the freedom to do it how you feel is best to do it? like like with the clients and the team, because I'm sure it'll be different though, because that's why you talk to the clients to like see how they're experiencing it, but like kind of both. Like how would you say both?
So the buildings are really straightforward, and it's a direct response to the money, right? So if it's don't are in the budget, it will not be built. So everything is quite pragmatical, but I usually add kind of a level of maybe poetry into it. And, and when you're talking with engineers, they can understand the pragmatical thing, but the poetry they sometimes don't understand, right? And that's great. But you need to talk with their language too. So when they are really pragmatic and pragmatical, and to do kind of more important things for me, I go and to talk other things, and sometimes I even like send them a poetry, for example, you know. So I'm kind of bold in this direction with them, and we are learning together. But again, as I mentioned previously, I'm designing the building during the whole process, right? So sometimes I have went to a direction in terms of like the technical drawing, it wasn't the good direction. And someone come up with a more rational way, so we change it. But we need to change according to our previous concept, otherwise the buildings start to lose their qualities. And so we are really keen with that, with the client, with everything, everyone that is involved, and with the team, right? And I leave a lot of freedom to the team to do the details and do kind of more specific drawings of the project, but they need to do kind of, if want to do a detail of something, they need to bring me 5 different ways of doing that, right? Then we can discuss, because if you just have one way, we don't know if it is the best way. So you need to spend time and try to solve the problem in a different ways. Then you can select. So it's about editing. It's a process of editing the project all the time, you know. So for example, if you're gonna see a book from a photographer, it's 12, maybe 50 photos inside the book, but he took like 1,000 to have the book, and he started to say like, this is not good, this is good, this is not good, this is good. So you need to have this resources to do that. All right. Can you repeat that question?
So pre-match is that you elaborate more about your philosophy and your approach and your methodology about detailing, and how, while let's say the morphological or the formal solution of the buildings is rather clear, many times there is a lot of layers and intricacy within the details, right? Is that right? So you just talk about that.
All right. I think I talked a little bit previously, but I don't know if how much you understood into the presentation, or how much I was clear enough in the presentation. But if you see the buildings, they're the most important thing that I design is the structure, and everything comes from that, you know. So this is why I think your building is so extraordinary, because it's design of the structure, and this attitude towards the project come from modernity in our country, because in the 50s we have so many things to do, and if you do a good structure and nothing else will be built, at least you have something, right? So I usually start from this point. Like if you design a good structure, the proportion of it, and I take a lot of time doing that, and by now I know the proportion of things. So in wood, for example, I can design really precisely. Maybe it would change like 1 to 2 centimeters by the end of the process, but I know exactly how the structure behavior, the behavior of the structure. So when I'm talking with the engineers that today are like my closest friends, we are talking the same language, so I know exactly what is happening. And so, for example, the detail on the column that is lifted from the ground, It's just because we are cantilevering the whole building with the mass of the walls, and that allowed me to design this type of detail. I can design it like with 2 centimeters from the ground, but I was, no, let's do with 10 because it would be more kind of more relevant to the building and what the discourse that I'm trying to bring to the building. So I think it starts from the structure, then it starts from how the materials are combined, you know, because when you put the problem, wood with wood is easy. Now wood with brick is more tricky because they behave in a different way. So how you predict that type of behavior during the winter, during the summer. So the joints, it's actually where an important part of the building. So I pay attention a lot to the connections of things and leave a space for them. What's her name? Kaylin. So you know what I do right now? Right in the beginning, I put a huge effort into the project, but like huge, huge, huge. So when the client looks to the project in the first presentation, I work it so much that he looks at me like, pity of this guy, I cannot change anything right now because he works so much, you know? So that's my strategy right now. So in the last 4 years, I didn't have any trouble with that. It changed, but like few things. So.
I wanted to know if you could speak about when you first thought or realized you wanted to be an architect. And then, as a second piece of that, is there something in particular that you would identify in your work and your practice that is kind of a chief area in which you want to improve, in which you're still learning? And how do you approach that?
So I studied engineer first. I did 2.5 years of mechanic engineer, but I came from a family from a photographer. So my father is a photographer, my grandfather is a photographer. So the relation with art for me was important, but I didn't actually understood. Then I just went to do a random art course, and I just realized what I'm doing with my life. I wanna be in the role in a different way, right? And the way that I work for me is how I am in a certain way. You know, so I'm trying to be as sincere and straightforward with myself, right? So obviously it's almost kind of therapeutic in some way, right? But I think it comes from looking to artists that I admire, and I do admire a lot of artists more sometimes than architects, and by saying that, I point out towards a direction that I'm super interested in, that is trying to be more straightforward, conceptually speaking, and with my projects, and try to add another layer to them. And another thing that I'm super interested in now is landscape plans, and I have been studying from, I don't know, 5 years now, and I just we got a commission to redo the Boule Max gardens in Paris at UNESCO Building. So I'm looking forward to this project. So I'm just like Saturday flying to there to see. So I'm keep studying the plants and the relationship between the plants. And Boule Max, I don't know how much you know about Boule Max, but he was the guy of the modern garden, and he studied a lot of local plants in Brazil, but he present their gardens with paintings. So the volumes of the plants are related to the colors of the paintings, and so on and so forth. So this is what I'm interested in now to bring more to the project.
So yeah. They didn't give me the chance to thank you for this amazing lecture, and I think this is, I think it was extraordinary for as a first moment for gathering for all of us, and it's gonna give us food for thought, ideas, images, to go through the whole year. So thanks. It was a great lecture. Thanks a lot, Gustavo. So my contacts are here if you need something, and please feel free to reach me out. I'm a Brazilian and not North American, so in terms of email, I not respond in the same day, right? But I I get back to you.